All right, here's what's up on a Tuesday edition of the program. Ryan Day on Buckeye Roundtable yesterday. You'll hear from him in just a second. Before we do, though, the more and more I thought about what we talked about yesterday a little bit, the more and more I believe it. I really believe that this was kind of the perfect start to this season for Ohio State. So if you missed what we were talking about yesterday, now it's all possible because you beat Texas. Right? You beat Texas. So I think the approach from the Ohio State football program kind of is as follows. And my guess is this is what they did in the lead up. You had training camp to build towards your showcase Super Bowl. It was the biggest game in the season in college football, but really didn't mean anything, right? Didn't. Both teams are fine. It's going to be fine. But you get this massive test right out of the gates. And now that you win it, now you've got this massive data point, right? If you lose it, that doesn't mean anything first week. You win it, you go, hey, we beat the number one team in the country. There's our data point right there. That gives you some room for error down the stretch. So you build towards that. There's a specific game plan you put in offensive and defensively to win that game. Once it goes final, now all of a sudden you have a second build-up to the start of conference play. So you get what amounts to a glorified scrimmage practice against Grambling last week where you could have named the score. The talent discrepancy was as big as you'll ever see in college football. Then you get a pretty good sized step up this week. Now, how big of a step up? You're still, 31.5 point favorites? So it's not like this is a 2-touchdown favorite situation. You're still expected to absolutely boat race Ohio on Saturday. I think the Bobcats will be pretty frisky for this thing, especially to start. So now all of a sudden you get a little bit of a ramp up. Then you look at those two games, you can look back and go, okay, here's what we do well, here's what we need to improve upon. We got a bye week to get right, and then we get a pretty big test at Washington at the end of the month. If you haven't watched Washington yet, maybe start. They're real. They're definitely real. Are they Oregon real? No. But I'm not convinced they're not Illinois real. I'm not convinced they're not that. So that's something you have to kind of look forward to at the end of the month. So it sets up really perfectly for Ryan Day and his staff to almost have two separate mountains to scale in the first 2 months. My guess is what you've gotten out of this from this team was an incredibly locked-in group. You got a group of guys who were you can't have any wasted minutes preparing for Texas. You have their full attention right out of the gates. So you kind of get two separate training camps and two separate mountains to scale, and I think it fits a young team like this perfectly.
Yeah, I think with teams that haven't had a lot of on-field experience, you worry about slow starts. And
yeah,
I mean, I think the only person really that looked like they needed a wake-up was Jeremiah Smith in Game 1 with two really uncharacteristic drops. But everything else outside of that, everybody has seemed poised and collective and cool and calm, and even through mistakes. It hasn't affected really anybody else. And even JJ, came back and had a record-setting game in week 2. And so for this team, you kind of had that worry of over the next 2 weeks post-Texas, was there going to be a lull? And obviously you'll have the bye next week to correct anything from the first 3 weeks of actual games. But then at least I don't have any concern that this young team's not going to be up and ready to go against Washington on the 27th. Now, we're still waiting on a time for that thing, but it feels like we're creeping closer to 3:30 kick.
I'm getting nervous.
So Troy sent that to us yesterday.
Did
a great friend of the program said, what
Tell
about
the people.
An 11 o'clock start for Ohio State and Washington?
I don't believe that.
And I don't it hadn't even entered my mind until that hypothetical was thrown out. What if they put Ohio State, Washington in that window?
Can you do 10?
Yeah.
Because there was the fourth window at 10, but that was an ESPN window. I don't know what a Fox window is on a Saturday night. I'll tell you what, Washington would prefer that.
Yeah.
You think Washington wouldn't love an 8 o'clock Pacific start for this? I don't think it's in play. My guess is Ohio State. My hope is that Ohio State could say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. But I don't know what they agreed to in this television contract. The point Troy made was that a lot of these other times are being gobbled up. So we're still waiting on 3:30, though, right? That's kind of the one that we all think it's going to be in, and that isn't scheduled yet?
It's not yet.
So that's the one that it's got to be. Let me pull up week 5?
Week 5 of the season. So CBS does not have a game scheduled or it has announced a time just yet.
All right. So the only one scheduled is Oregon-Penn State. That's
the whiteout.
NBC. That's the whiteout. That's at night. So in terms of noon, you can't be noon. So they could do USC. My guess is they'll do USC Illinois at noon if they can both get there undefeated. That feels like big noon. So you need the 3:30 window. Ohio State Washington would be the 3:30 window because CBS doesn't have any other agreements. So it's got to be a Big Ten game. So I think you're safe. I think it's going to be 3:30, which is 12:30 out there.
And then we're going to have Washington fans complaining about having to have a noon kickoff for a big game, but it doesn't matter.
I think that's what it is.
They're not worried. I mean, if Washington was playing someone else, maybe I could see them trying to push that 11 o'clock start. They're not going to do that with Ohio State because they know Ohio State brings the eyeballs. They're going to want that in a better window than 11 p.m. at night. So that game is obviously we're speculating, but that game's going to be 3:30 on CBS.
I think you're going to be fine, too. There could be an FS1 window that I'm unaware of, but I think CBS will gobble it. I think it's going to be one of the games of the weekend, honestly. I think it'd be big noon if you could. You just can't play at 9 o'clock in the morning on the Pacific Coast. So I think you're going to be 3:30. You'll be fine. Here's Ryan Day from Roundtable last night. Let's start with the fast start and the attitude of his team.
Offensively, I felt like we got up to a fast start. We were executing pretty sharp, right out of the gate. Thought that we were more explosive, and certainly we take everything into consideration, but I do think, we came out with the right attitude. Certainly after a big win against Texas, there was no letdown in terms of effort. The defense created turnovers, which was a big emphasis point, and then we were able to get some guys in the game and hopefully build some depth.
Well, that's the thing that we talked about. Get that big lead and play the depth. Here's Ryan Day on doing just that.
Quite honestly, we wanted, the game to kind of go the way it did in the first half. Come out and execute cleanly and, have a bunch of plays. Because, if the game started to get, a little sideways, we knew we were going to try to get some of our guys who hadn't played in the game. So we wanted to make sure we were getting enough plays in the first half. That was the idea. But also to take a look at tempo, to see how our guys can handle it, because we know it could be a tool. And when you have the ability to dictate the tempo of the game, that's certainly our advantage.
Ryan Day had to like what he saw from his quarterback, Julian, saying every single pass was caught. Now, one by the other team, and he'll learn from that. But all the rest of them hit guys, the right guys, in their hands, in stride. Incredibly accurate performance. Here's Ryan on his quarterback.
Yeah, that's what we were laughing about. So only at Ohio State can you have one incompletion, and that's all we're going to talk about, right? Yeah. Well, especially when it's an interception. But, no, I think he played really well. I thought the ball came out on time. He threw some really accurate throws. His feet were moving quickly right from the jump, which was all really positive. Certainly a learning lesson down there in the red area. But he learns quickly, and that's a good sign for a young quarterback.
This was a funny anecdote on the Caleb Downs interception where he blitzed and then didn't, dropped, and then somehow made an interception. Here's Ryan Day on his All-American safety.
And he's just, a really smart player, has great football IQ, puts a lot of work in. And, he knew exactly what the play was when we got off the field. He told me, it was triple slant. And, I came up and hypnotized the offensive lineman and then popped out the window. And he could verbalize everything that he was looking to do. And it just, he's beyond his years, just a really mature young man and, a leader for us.
He's Ed Reed, isn't he?
I mean, the comps are getting slimmer and slimmer in terms of what you can compare this guy to. And, you're encroaching on all-time status. And Ed Reed's obviously all-time in college football. But just I can't imagine. This was like back to Chase Young when he was all of a sudden on 2 feet. And Wisconsin's like, wait a minute. Like, it feels like other teams, when they see Caleb coming down, they're going to be like, no, just call a timeout.
Yeah.
Like, don't even get the play off because, he will kill you in that situation. And he did.
Yeah, the combination of athleticism and most especially intellect on him is just off the charts. Really is. Like, the ability to be everywhere. I saw some early Heisman odds on On3, had him in the top 5 or 6 in the country at Heisman. And, if it's most outstanding player, which is what it says for us to do when we vote, he's going to garner some attention if this keeps up. Because if you see what he's capable of and what he does, and I know, Bake, you're at the place, so you can definitely see it. It's more apparent there. Like on the television copy, you don't see it as much because they shoot it too tight. But when you're there, you have the all-22, then you see what he's capable of.
And, Beau, I remember you talking about that last year, watching the all-22s. And I don't know, I didn't watch those last year, but I'm guessing it's even more impressive this year. Yeah. Because he's literally like everybody, when the play is coming in, they're all looking at him to know where to go because of all the different movement they're doing and trying to disguise what they're going to be in on defense and all of that. The whole team is like, hey, where am I supposed to be here? Where am I lining up at? What's going on? Yeah. He is just his intelligence and his football acumen is just off the charts, and you see it all the time, and you hear about it here, like, he knew exactly what they were running. He knew right where to drop. And, I mean, it really did look like that quarterback was throwing the ball right to him. Yeah. Like he was the intended receiver.
Yeah. To get to that spot that quickly, to make it look like that, is just a tribute to football genius is what it is. All right. This was a little bit of mixed emotions. A legend hanging him up. We'll get the details on that coming up next. Bishop and Friends right here on The Fan.